Tories are slamming the Liberal leader, including Michelle Rempel. She is the Minister of State for Western Economic Diversification, and she joins us from our Ottawa studio. Your title is a mouthful.
Yes, it is. It surely is.
All right. So what do you think of Mr. Trudeau's comments this week, Michelle?
Well, first of all, I think it shows how out of touch he is with, Main Street Canadians. I don't think that there's anyone sitting around the dinner table talking about how the legalization of marijuana is a #1 priority for this country. I'm really surprised that he came out with his first, tangible policy statement that was talking about the legalization of drugs. I mean, frankly, that's something that certainly I haven't heard from my constituents, and our focus is on the economy. Now, the other thing that really hits close to my heart is that there is a big implication for the health and safety of Canadians around this stance. We've heard from the Canadian Police Association, from senior leadership within the RCMP, that there are serious questions about whether legalization of this substance would lead to increased criminal activity. Also, there's been studies recently which have showed that there is a link between increased cases of schizophrenia with marijuana usage in teens 16 and under. So, I think that there's so many questions around this substance. There's so many questions related to criminal activity being associated with it that I'm really quite surprised that, somebody who wants to be Prime Minister is being so unequivocal in a position that is frankly offside.
Let me ask you, because you are right. A lot of folks, me being a former business reporter, economy seems to be top of mind and priority for a lot of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. But you got to give Justin Trudeau credit. When he says something, stupid or otherwise, it does make headlines, and he has put this issue back on the front burner. Now, I've been looking at polls, all the recent polls, and while the support is split between legalizing and decriminalizing pot, shall we say, one thing is for sure, people are not happy with the status quo. And I only state that because my next question to you is, does the Conservative government have a plan with respect to this moving forward? Because folks are clearly not satisfied with the status quo.
Sure. I mean, to the front end of your statement, I find Mr. Trudeau all sizzle and no steak. I mean, with regard to his position on the economy, I frankly don't know where he stands outside of some of his caucus members making derogatory statements towards the energy sector in Alberta. With regard to drug use, our government has been firm and unequivocal in our desire to ensure that Canadian streets stay safe and that Canadians are healthy. The legislation that we've introduced over the last few years, which the Liberal Party has voted against, includes increasing maximum penalties for drug producers. We've increased health transfer payments to the provinces to ensure that there is adequate and sustainable funding for our healthcare services, in contrast to the previous Liberal government, which cut these in their government's time. So I think that when you look at our government's record of introducing legislation which deals with these issues, we've got the track record of substance here, and certainly Mr. Trudeau does not.
But it doesn't seem to be resonating with Canadians, though. Like I said, the status quo, poll after poll after poll indicates that the status quo is not acceptable. Again, folks are mixed in terms of which way to go, which direction to go, but it looks like they're looking to government for some solution there.
Right. I mean, but poll after poll after poll also shows that Canadians' priority is not this issue. We believe that Canadians' priorities right now are ensuring that we have jobs for Canadians and long-term sustainable economic growth. And that's where a majority of our policy has been set, because this is something that we've heard from Canadians. Again, on this particular issue, the legislation that we've put in place to ensure that there are stricter penalties for drug production, to give police the tools that they need to get away from organized crime happening in our community related to drug use, those are tangible tools. Those are tangible measures which will help address this issue. It's taking a position saying, oh, we're going to legalize it without talking about the implications on people's health, that study that I just mentioned about schizophrenia, I think that that's irresponsible and frankly offside with where mainstream Canadians are at.
Speaking of irresponsible, I know a lot of our viewers are quite up in arms with respect to Mr. Trudeau's comments about legal drug injection sites. It's quite troubling, I think, for a lot of people who are worried about these clinics, for lack of a better word, popping up in or close to their backyard. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, we gave this a great deal of thought
Yeah.
this year with the introduction of our Respecting Communities Act. This particular piece of legislation would clarify the requirements and information submission around the development of these particular sites. Right now, in order to develop these sites, there needs to be a request to the health minister to grant an exemption under part of our legislation which deals with the distribution of illegal drugs. And we've certainly heard from a lot of people that there needs to be, first of all, robust community consultation for the communities that are affected by the development of
Right.
these sites. And we also want to make sure that provinces are consulted, so under this legislation there would be a requirement that the federal Minister of Health would not even review an application for these types of site until the province was on side. We also want to make sure that anybody who's requesting this has done a lot of work with local law enforcement officials to make sure that there isn't a greater impact on the community.
Okay.
So you know, I encourage your viewers to follow this debate because I think it's very important and quite common sense.
Absolutely. I've got one final question for you. I am out of time, but I've got to put this question to you. Mr. Trudeau, and we report this almost exhaustingly on Sun News, he comes up with some crazy, zany ideas, or shall we say empty ideas. At least that's what our viewers tell us, and some of our political pundits seem to believe. So that stated, this guy remains very popular with Canadians. What is it going to take for Conservatives to sort of shift the gears here? Because it doesn't seem, nothing seems to really stick to this guy.
Well, you know, when I come out to Ottawa to debate legislation, I know in my heart that my first job and my first responsibility is to my constituents. And they expect and demand a high level of accountability and a high level of commitment to developing the policy that matters to them most.
We're talking about Justin Trudeau, though.
And I'm just giving my experience.
Yeah.
And I find that in contrast, our government has been so on board with ensuring the economic health of this country, looking at policies to make sure that we may not only remain competitive internationally, but competitive at home. Justin's not even talking about this, and Mr. Trudeau is not even talking about this. And I think that as you know, the shine wears off and people realize that, to use your term, there's a lot of empty policies there, or if there's policies at all, people will realize that our country is well served under a Conservative government, which I'm proud to be a part of.
All right. Well, it's good to see you, and thanks for coming on our program for the first time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.